Welcome back, guys. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Have you ever had that feeling when you know something is wrong, even though nobody told you anything? When even the air feels like it's holding its breath. That afternoon, Sergeant Harper Smith felt exactly that way when a message came over the command center radio. A spy plane had stopped sending signals. There was no emergency call. There was no warning. Just silence. 12 minutes later, a small Cessna observation plane carrying 2 Air Force workers disappeared from radar at the same spot. 2 planes, same place, same day. Harper stood beside Kandahar Forward Operating Base, staring at the sharp mountains stretching into the pale sky like crooked teeth. The wind carried dust and something else, something that made the hair on his neck stand up. It had been 3 weeks since he returned from Fallujah. He thought he'd left his nightmares there. He was wrong. "Sarge, you seeing this?" Corporal Ray Morales walked up, his M40 sniper rifle hanging across his back. Ray had that look, the one that said he was about to make a joke to break the nervous feeling. 2 birds down in 6 hours. Either we have the world's worst pilots, or something up there really doesn't like visitors. Harper didn't smile. He'd learned in Iraq that when things felt wrong, they usually were. "Get your gear. We're leaving in 20 minutes. "Who else is coming?" "Just us and Brooks." Ray's eyebrows shot up. 3 men for a search and rescue in dangerous territory? It's not search and rescue anymore. Harper pulled out a folded map with worn edges from being handled so much. "Command thinks both crews are dead. This is recovery body bags and black boxes. In and out before dark." "Before dark," Ray repeated, looking at the mountains. "Those peaks are at least 4 hours away. Then we better move fast." Private Ethan Brooks was 22 years old and had been in the country for exactly 47 days. You could tell by the way his uniform still had sharp creases, the way his gear was organized perfectly, and the way his hands shook just a little when Harper explained the mission to him in the ready room. This would be Brooks's first real mission outside the base. "You're coming because you're our communications expert," Harper explained, watching the kid's face go pale. "And because you know how to work a camera. Command wants pictures of everything we find." "Pictures?" Brooks repeated, his voice cracking. "Yes, Sergeant. Stay close. Do what we say and you'll be fine." Harper placed a hand on the young soldier's shoulder. It was a lie. He had no idea if Brooks would be fine. He had no idea if any of them would be fine. But that's what leaders did. They lied to keep their people moving forward. The Humvee's engine started at 2:15 in the afternoon. Harper drove. Ray rode in the passenger seat with his rifle ready. Brooks sat in back, surrounded by rescue equipment they all knew they wouldn't need. The base gates opened, and they rolled out into the huge, dangerous emptiness of southern Afghanistan. The first hour was normal, if you could call driving through Taliban territory normal. They followed a narrow road that curved between old mud brick buildings and dried-up poppy fields. Children watched them pass with old-looking eyes. Old men turned their backs. Women were nowhere to be seen. "I hate this place," Ray said quietly, looking at the ridgelines through his scope. Every window could hide a sniper. Every pile of trash could be a bomb. Every smiling kid could be working for the bad guys. "Eyes up," Harper said. "We're not here to make friends." The road began to climb as they got closer to the mountains. The land changed from brown dust to gray rock, from flat plains to steep valleys. The air became thinner and colder. The radio crackled with static, the signal getting worse with every mile. At 3:20 in the afternoon, they reached the last marked road. Beyond this point, it was just goat trails and dry riverbeds. Harper stopped the Humvee and checked his GPS against the last known position of the crashed aircraft. "We're 3 kilometers out," he said. "From here, we walk." They geared up in silence. Body armor, bullets, water, medical supplies. Ray carried his sniper rifle and a handgun. Brooks had an M4 rifle that looked too big in his hands and a camera bag across his chest. Harper took the lead with his own M4 and a handheld radio that was already picking up nothing but static. The mountains rose above them like sleeping giants. They moved in fighting formation. Harper leading, Brooks in the middle, Ray at the back, constantly checking behind them. The ground was brutal, loose rocks that shifted under every step, narrow paths along cliff edges, dry creek beds filled with thorny bushes. The sun beat down without mercy, but Harper knew that would change. Up here, when the sun set, the temperature would drop 40 degrees in an hour. "Contact 3 o'clock," Ray said quietly. Harper froze, his rifle coming up. "What do you see?" "Crash site, 200 meters." They walked carefully, weapons ready. And there it was, scattered across a rocky slope like a child's broken toys. Pieces of the Cessna. The main body had split on impact. The wings were torn off. The tail was stuck in a boulder 50 feet up the slope. Burned metal, broken glass, papers blowing in the wind like wounded birds. But no bodies. "Brooks, start taking pictures," Harper ordered. "Ray, watch our surroundings." Brooks's camera clicked over and over as he photographed the crash site. Harper moved through the wreckage, his trained eyes looking at everything. The plane had come in hard and fast, nose first into the mountainside. The pilots would have died right away. Should have died right away. So where were they? "Sarge," Ray's voice was tight. "You need to see this." Harper joined him at the edge of the crash site. Ray was kneeling beside a flat rock, his face hard to read. Scratched into the stone, as if by something sharp, were 3 words in English. They took them. The letters were deep, carved with desperate force. "Fresh." "Who took them?" Brooks whispered, his camera forgotten. "And who carved this?" Ray added. "The pilots were Air Force," Harper interrupted. "Look for the black box, personal belongings, anything that explains what happened here." They searched for 30 minutes. The sun was lower now, the shadows longer. The wind had picked up, carrying strange sounds from deeper in the mountains. Echoes that might have been voices, or might have been nothing at all. Harper found the pilot's flight bag, the contents scattered but complete. No blood, no bodies, no explanation. Brooks's voice cracked across the radio. "Sergeant Smith, I found something." He was standing at the edge of the crash site, pointing uphill. Harper and Ray joined him, and that's when they saw it. A trail. Not a game trail or a goat path. Something had been dragged uphill through the rocks. 2 lines in the loose rock, about 6 feet apart, leading toward a dark crack in the mountainside. "Could be the pilots," Ray said. "Taliban could have dragged the bodies." Harper studied the tracks. They were too regular, too deep, and they led in the wrong direction. Away from any known Taliban positions, away from any roads or villages, toward the most remote and dangerous part of the mountains. "We follow it," he decided. "Sarge, it's 4:15 in the afternoon," Brooks said, checking his watch. "If we go up there, we won't make it back to the Humvee before dark." "I know." They followed the trail. It climbed steeply, winding between huge boulders and across fields of loose stone that clattered underfoot. The drag marks were steady, purposeful. Whatever had made them was strong and had moved with a plan. Harper's gut screamed at him to turn back, but his orders were clear. Recover the missing people. The trail led them to a narrow gap between 2 cliff faces. The opening was barely wide enough for a man to pass through sideways. The drag marks continued through it, disappearing into shadow. "I don't like this," Ray said. "This is a perfect place for an ambush. We don't have a choice." Harper checked his rifle, made sure a bullet was in the chamber. "Stay tight, Brooks. You're in the middle. If anything happens, you run back the way we came. Understand?" Brooks nodded, his face the color of chalk. They entered the gap. The rock walls rose 40 feet on both sides, cutting off the sun. It was suddenly cold, the temperature dropping as if they'd walked into a freezer. Their footsteps echoed. Water dripped somewhere, the sound getting louder and stranger. Harper's finger rested on his trigger guard, his heart pounding in his ears. The gap opened into a small natural bowl, a circle of stones surrounded by straight cliffs. And there, on the far side, was a cave entrance. Not large, maybe 5 feet high and 4 feet wide, but perfectly round, as if it had been drilled into the mountain by some huge drill. The drag marks led straight to it and disappeared into total darkness. "No way," Brooks breathed. "No way are we going in there." Harper stared at the cave. Something about it felt wrong. The shape was too perfect, the darkness too complete, and the silence. Jesus, the silence was crushing, like a physical weight pressing down on them. "We mark it," he said finally. "Command can send a bigger team with proper cave equipment." He pulled out a can of spray paint and walked toward the entrance. As he raised his arm to mark the rock, a sound came from deep inside the cave. It was like nothing Harper had ever heard. Part machine whir, part animal growl, part something else entirely. A sound that made his teeth hurt and his stomach twist. All three of them stepped back, rifles raised. The sound came again, closer this time. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. "We're leaving," Harper said. "Now." They backed away from the cave, keeping their weapons pointed at the entrance. Nothing came out. Nothing moved. But Harper could feel eyes on them, watching, thinking, deciding. They went back through the gap, moving fast but not running. Running would make them prey. When they finally came out into sunlight, Harper checked his watch. 5:02 in the afternoon. The sun was already touching the mountain peaks. They had maybe 90 minutes of light left, and they were 3 kilometers from the Humvee through dangerous land. "Double time," he ordered. They moved as fast as the ground allowed, half running down the steep slopes, sliding on loose rocks, pushing through thorn bushes that tore at their uniforms. Brooks fell twice, scrambling back to his feet with wide, scared eyes. Ray kept looking back, his rifle ready, his jaw tight. The sun was a red wound on the horizon when they finally reached the Humvee. Harper had never been so happy to see anything in his life. They threw their gear in the back and climbed inside, locking the doors as if that would keep out whatever they'd found in those mountains. Harper started the engine, coughed once, twice, then roared to life. He threw it into gear, and the radio crackled. All three of them froze. The radio had been dead for the last 2 hours, nothing but static. But now, through the speaker, came a voice. Twisted, wrong, like someone speaking underwater or through broken glass. Asterisk, "Don't leave us. So cold. They're coming back." Asterisk. It was one of the missing pilots. "Holy," Ray whispered. "That's Captain Morrison. I saw his photo in the briefing." Asterisk, "In the dark. Can't see. Something's in here with us." Asterisk. Brooks grabbed the radio. "Captain Morrison, this is Rescue Team Alpha 3. What is your position?" "Captain Morrison, do you hear me?" Static. Then asterisk cave. "Oh God, it sees us." Asterisk. A scream, sharp and short, cut off in the middle. Then nothing but static. Harper's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed at him to drive away, to get back to base, to report this nightmare and let someone else handle it. But he'd been a soldier for 8 years. He'd fought in Fallujah. He'd pulled wounded men from burning vehicles. He'd done things that haunted his dreams. He couldn't leave men behind. "We're going back," he said quietly. "What?" Brooks's voice cracked. "Sarge, you heard that? They're already dead. Or worse. We need to do our jobs," Harper interrupted. "Those men are alive. They need help. We're going back." Ray was silent for a long moment. Then he loaded a bullet in his rifle. "All right, but we do this smart. We get lights, we get more ammunition, and we don't go into that cave without a plan." They opened the equipment boxes in the back of the Humvee. Flashlights, glow sticks, extra magazines, a first aid kit, a body bag that now felt like a cruel joke. And something Brooks pulled out from under the seats, a flare gun. "Will this help?" he asked. "Everything helps," Harper said. They checked their gear one more time. Harper looked at Ray, then at Brooks. These 2 men were now his responsibility, his brothers. Whatever was waiting in that cave, they would face it together. The sun had set completely now. The mountains were dark shapes against a purple sky. Stars were beginning to appear, cold, distant, not caring about the tiny humans struggling below. Harper turned on the Humvee's headlights. The beams cut through the growing darkness, lighting up the trail that led back up into the mountains. Back to the cave. Back to whatever was waiting there. Into the abyss we go, Harper thought to himself. He put the vehicle in gear and they began to climb. The Humvee's headlights carved tunnels through the darkness as they climbed back toward the mountains. Harper drove slowly, carefully, fighting the vehicle's pull to slide on loose rock. In the passenger seat, Ray had his night vision goggles down, scanning the ridgelines for threats. In back, Brooks was checking and rechecking his camera equipment, his hands moving with nervous energy. None of them spoke. What was there to say? The temperature had dropped 20 degrees since sunset. Harper could see his breath in the glow of the dashboard lights. Outside, the mountains were invisible walls of blackness, shown only by the missing stars. The wind had picked up, howling through the valleys with a sound like distant screaming. At 7:23 at night, they reached the end of the road, the same spot where they'd parked before. Harper killed the engine but left the headlights on, lighting up the trail that led up toward the gap, toward the cave. "Radio check," he said, testing his radio. "Static. Brooks, you getting anything?" Brooks played with his equipment. "Negative, Sarge. We're in a dead zone. No satellite, no base contact. We're on our own. Then we stay together. No one separates for any reason." "Understood. Understood," they said together. They stepped out into the cold. The wind immediately cut through Harper's uniform, making him wish he'd brought cold weather gear. He'd thought they'd be back at base by now, drinking bad coffee and writing reports. Instead, they were about to climb into a mountain in dangerous territory in the dark to investigate something that had already killed 2 pilots and made sounds that didn't belong in this world. You ever wonder what makes you do something in a situation like this? When every part of you screams at you to run, but your training and your duty pull you forward. That's where Harper was. That's where they all were. They geared up by flashlight. Harper gave out the glow sticks, green glow sticks that would mark their trail. Ray loaded his rifle with a mix of regular bullets and tracers. "Just in case we need to see where we're shooting." Brooks attached his camera to a chest holder, leaving his hands free for his weapon. "Remember," Harper said, his voice low and steady, "we're looking for survivors. We get in, we find them, we get out. If things go wrong, we come back to this position and call for air support." "What if we can't get out?" Brooks asked, his voice small. Harper met his eyes. "Then we fight." They started up the trail at 7:41 at night. Harper led with his M4 and a powerful tactical flashlight. Ray followed 5 meters back, his sniper rifle hanging and his handgun out, better for close spaces. Brooks brought up the rear, his camera recording everything, the night vision mode turning their world into shades of green and black. The climb was harder in the dark. Every shadow could hide a hole or a drop-off. Every sound was louder. Their boots on stone, their breathing, the rustle of their gear. Harper cracked a glow stick and stuck it between rocks, marking their path. They'd need these breadcrumbs to find their way back. When they reached the gap, the narrow opening between the cliff faces, they paused. Harper shone his light into the passage. The beam seemed to get swallowed by the darkness, showing only the first 20 feet before fading into nothing. "This is where it gets real," Ray said softly. "Once we're in there, we're stuck." Harper nodded and entered the gap. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees the moment they stepped between the rock walls. Harper's breath came out in thick clouds. The beam of his flashlight showed the same narrow passage, the same dripping water, the same crushing silence. But now, in the dark, it felt different. Alive. Watching. They moved slowly, weapons up, fingers on triggers. Brooks's camera captured everything. The slick rock walls, the pools of ice-cold water, the way their lights created dancing shadows that looked almost human. Harper dropped another glow stick, the green glow bouncing off wet stone. "You hear that?" Ray whispered. They froze. Harper strained his ears. There, beneath the sound of dripping water and their own breathing, was something else. A low humming, mechanical but not quite, like an engine running far away or a generator buried underground. "It's coming from the cave," Brooks said. They continued forward. The gap seemed longer than Harper remembered. The walls pressing in, the air growing thinner. His chest felt tight. The humming grew louder, more clear. It rose and fell in waves, almost like breathing. Then they came out into the bowl. Harper's flashlight beam swept across the circle of stone. Everything looked the same as before: the straight walls, the rocky ground, the drag marks leading to the cave entrance. But something was different. In the darkness, the perfectly round opening seemed to glow with a faint, sickly light. Not actual light, but an absence of darkness. And the humming was definitely coming from inside, beating like a heartbeat. "Sarge," Ray's voice was tight, "my skin's crawling. Everything in me says we should not go in there." Harper felt it too. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff in the dark, knowing one more step would send you falling into nothing. But somewhere in that cave were 2 Air Force pilots who had called for help. Men who were depending on them. "We mark our entry point," Harper decided. "Brooks, you stay here with the radio. If we're not back in 30 minutes, or if anything comes out of that cave, you run. You get back to the Humvee and you drive until you have radio signal. Then you call in everything we have, artillery, airstrikes, I don't care. You tell them to turn this mountain to glass. Clear?" Brooks's face was pale in the flashlight beam, but he nodded. "Clear, Sergeant." Harper and Ray walked toward the cave entrance. Up close, Harper could see that the stone around the opening was smooth, not worn by water or wind, but polished, as if by huge heat or pressure. The humming was louder here, vibrating in his chest, making his fillings ache. He pulled out another glow stick, cracked it, and tossed it into the cave. The green glow fell for a long time before hitting the ground. The cave wasn't just a cave. It was a shaft going down at a steep angle into the mountain. The walls were the same unnaturally smooth stone, and the drag marks continued down, down, down into darkness. "Jesus Christ," Ray breathed. "How deep does this go?" Harper shone his flashlight down the shaft. The beam went maybe 50 feet before the darkness swallowed it. But in that brief light, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Metal. Gleaming. Geometric. "That's not natural," Ray said. "Sarge, that's not a cave. That's a tunnel. Something made this." Harper's mind raced. Taliban didn't have the equipment to drill perfect tunnels through solid rock. Neither did the Afghan government. Neither did anyone in this part of the world. And the drag marks leading down, those weren't made by fighters dragging bodies. They were made by something else. The radio at Brooks's position crackled to life. All 3 of them jumped. Harper spun, his weapon coming up. Brooks was staring at his radio, his hand shaking as he raised it to his ear. Asterisk, "Help. Please. It's coming back." Asterisk. It was the pilot's voice again, Captain Morrison, but different now. Weaker. More desperate. And underneath his words was that humming sound, so loud it twisted the transmission. "Captain Morrison, this is Sergeant Harper Smith, U.S. Army. What is your position? How many are with you?" Static. Then asterisk, "Don't know. Can't see. Johnson's not moving anymore. It took his... Oh God. What is that thing?" Asterisk. "Captain, we're coming for you. Stay calm. Make noise so we can find you." Asterisk. No. No. You have to destroy it. Burn everything. It's spreading. It's in my head." Asterisk. The transmission ended with a scream that made Harper's skin crawl. Not a scream of pain. A scream of understanding something so terrible that the mind couldn't handle it. Silence. "We have to go down there," Harper said quietly. "That's crazy," Ray replied. But there was no strength in his voice. They both knew they didn't have a choice. Not really. Not if they wanted to live with themselves. Harper turned to Brooks. "New plan. You come with us, but you stay at the back. You're our anchor. You keep the rope." "Rope?" Brooks asked weakly. They had climbing rope in their gear. Standard equipment for mountain missions. Harper pulled it out, checked the anchors they'd need. The shaft was steep, maybe a 45-degree angle, but with the smooth walls, they'd need the rope to have any chance of getting back up. Ray found a strong boulder and tied the rope. Harper tested it with his full weight. It held. He dropped the coil down the shaft, watching it unroll into darkness. "Ray, you're with me. Brooks, you stay at the entrance with the radio. Feed us rope as we go down. If that rope goes slack or you hear anything wrong, you cut it and run. Don't try to be a hero." Brooks nodded, his jaw tight to keep his teeth from chattering. Harper took one last look at the night sky, stars bright and cold and not caring. Then he stepped into the cave. The moment his boot touched the smooth stone of the shaft, the humming changed pitch. It rose higher, became more urgent, almost excited. Harper felt it in his bones, in his teeth, behind his eyes. Ray was right behind him, one hand on the rope, the other holding his handgun. They went down. The shaft was exactly as it appeared, smooth, round, angled downward at a steady slope. Their flashlight beams showed more of the metallic gleam Harper had seen from above. It wasn't stuck in the rock. It was part of the rock, as if the stone had been partly changed into something else. Something that reflected light in colors that hurt to look at. "How is this possible?" Ray muttered. "This tunnel's been here for years, decades, and no one knew." "Maybe they did," Harper said. "Maybe that's why the aircraft were sent here. Maybe someone in command knew exactly what we'd find." That thought was somehow worse than the other option. They'd gone down maybe 75 feet when the shaft began to level out. The rope went slack. They'd reached its end. Harper dropped another glow stick. It bounced and rolled, showing a chamber ahead, a space large enough to stand, and something else. Equipment. American military equipment. Harper and Ray moved forward carefully, their weapons sweeping the darkness. The chamber was roughly circular, about 30 feet across. On the floor were scattered pieces of flight gear, helmets, oxygen masks, a flight suit torn into ribbons. And there, against the far wall, was a body. Not the pilot's. This body had been here longer. Much longer. Harper walked closer slowly. The body was dried out by the cold, dry air, still dressed in an old Soviet uniform. Afghan War era. 1980s. The man's face was frozen in a look of complete terror, his mouth open in a silent scream, his hands broken and clawed, as if he tried to dig his way out through solid stone. "Russians were here," Ray said. "Jesus. They found this place 30 years ago." Harper looked closer. Scratched into the stone next to the Soviet soldier's body were Russian letters. He didn't read Russian, but he recognized one word. It was the same in many languages. Demon. The humming suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was total. Crushing. Suffocating. Harper's ears rang with it. He and Ray stood frozen, their lights scanning the chamber, their fingers tight on their triggers. "Where are the pilots?" Ray whispered. As if in answer, a sound came from deeper in the tunnel. Not the humming this time. Footsteps. Slow. Shuffling. Dragging. Getting closer. "Captain Morrison?" Harper called out. "Johnson." The footsteps continued. Steady. Purposeful. Not hurrying. A figure came out from the darkness at the far end of the chamber. It was Captain Morrison. Or it had been. The man's flight suit was whole, his face recognizable from the briefing photos Harper had seen. But something was wrong. The captain walked with a strange jerky movement. His head tilted at an unnatural angle. His eyes were black. Completely black. No whites, no colored part. Just endless darkness that seemed to drink in their flashlight beams. "Captain," Harper's voice cracked. "Sir, we're here to get you out." Morrison's head turned toward them with a grinding sound, like stone on stone. When he spoke, his voice was layered, his own voice underneath, but something else speaking through him. "Asterisk, you shouldn't have come. Now you'll become part of it. Part of the growth. Part of the spreading. Asterisk. What are you?" Ray demanded, his weapon pointed at the figure. "Asterisk, we are old. We are patient. We are seeds planted in 1,000 worlds, growing in the dark places, waiting to bloom. This one found us, opened us, fed us with his fear and his blood. And now, asterisk." Morrison's body shook. His flight suit tore open, and something moved underneath. Something that wasn't flesh or bone, but looked like living wires, like roots made of metal and light, spreading through his body, eating him from the inside out. Asterisk, now we have enough. Enough to spread, to grow beyond this cave, beyond this mountain. You brought us gifts, your machines, your signals, your presence. and soon we will have your world. Asterisk. Fall back, Harper shouted. They ran. Behind them, Morrison, or the thing wearing Morrison, let out a sound that was part laugh, part scream, part that mechanical humming raised to a deafening pitch. The walls of the cave began to glow with that same sickly light, and Harper could see them moving, shifting, as if the stone itself was alive. They reached the rope and began climbing, hand over hand, boots scraping on smooth stone. The shaft that had taken minutes to go down now seemed impossibly long. Below them, the light was growing brighter, and with it came heat. Huge, burning heat that made the air shimmer. "Brooks!" Harper screamed into his radio. "Pull us up! Pull us up!" At the top of the shaft, Brooks heard the screaming and grabbed the rope. He pulled with everything he had, his boots pressed against the rock, his muscles screaming. Ray came out first, then Harper, both of them scrambling out of the cave entrance just as a wave of heat and light exploded up the shaft. "Run!" Harper grabbed Brooks and pushed him toward the gap. "Run now!" They ran through the bowl into the narrow passage, their flashlights bouncing wildly. Behind them, the cave entrance was glowing like a furnace, and that humming sound had become a roar. The mountain itself seemed to be waking up. They burst out of the gap and kept running, sliding and stumbling down the dark mountainside. Harper could hear rocks falling behind them, could see light leaking from cracks in the stone, as if something huge was moving beneath the surface. They reached the Humvee at 8:31 at night. All three of them were gasping, covered in dust and sweat despite the cold. Harper jumped into the driver's seat and started the engine. The vehicle lurched forward, sliding on loose stone as he pointed it back toward the road. "What the hell was that?" Brooks screamed. "What was in that cave?" Harper didn't answer. He didn't have an answer. He focused on driving, on putting distance between them and the mountain. In his rearview mirror, he could see the peaks outlined against a glow that shouldn't exist, like a sunrise happening underground. They were 2 kilometers away when Ray spoke, his voice hollow. "Sarge, stop the vehicle." "What? Why?" "Because we're not alone." Harper hit the brakes. The Humvee skidded to a stop. Ray was staring at his side mirror, his face pale in the dashboard glow. Harper looked in his own mirror and felt his blood turn to ice. There were lights behind them, not the glow from the mountain. These were lower, moving, dozens of them, hundreds, spreading across the slopes like a swarm of fireflies. "What are those?" Brooks whispered. As they watched, the lights began to come together, forming shapes, human-like shapes, walking in perfect sync down the mountain, toward the roads, toward the villages, toward the cities beyond. Harper understood then. The thing in the cave, it hadn't been killed by the heat and light. It had been activated, awakened, and now it was spreading, using every body it could find, every person it could infect. "We have to warn them," he said. "We have to warn everyone." He grabbed the radio, desperately trying every frequency. Static, static, static. Then, *Alpha 3, this is Kandahar base. Reading you weak but clear. What is your situation? Harper had never been so relieved to hear another human voice. Kandahar base, this is Sergeant Smith. We have a critical situation. We need to evacuate all positions within 50 kilometers of grid reference. The radio crackled, and for a moment Harper heard that other voice. The one that had spoken through Morrison. The one that was old and patient and hungry. Too late. We're already there. The radio went dead. Harper looked at Ray, then at Brooks. In the glow of the dashboard, he could see their fear, their exhaustion, their growing understanding that they were facing something beyond their training, beyond their weapons, beyond their understanding. "So what do we do?" Brooks asked. Harper thought about the Soviet soldier in the cave, frozen in eternal terror. He thought about Morrison eaten from within. He thought about those lights spreading across the mountain like an infection. Then he thought about every soldier who had ever faced impossible odds. Every person who had stood between the darkness and the people they were sworn to protect. Every choice between running and fighting, between survival and duty. He put the Humvee in gear. "We do what soldiers do," he said quietly. We fight. We warn everyone we can. We make them understand. And if we can't stop it, he paused, meeting their eyes, we make damn sure no one else wanders into those mountains unprepared. They drove through the night, racing toward the base, toward humanity, toward whatever came next. Behind them, the mountains continued to glow, and in the darkness, those lights kept spreading. But you need to understand something. This isn't just a story about 3 soldiers in Afghanistan. It's a warning, because if you've ever wondered what's really out there in the dark places of the world, in the caves and tunnels and forgotten corners where light doesn't reach, now you know. Some things should stay buried. Some doors should never be opened. Some questions should never be answered. Harper Smith, Ray Morales, and Ethan Brooks survived that night. But they carry it with them still, the memory of what they saw, what they barely escaped, what might still be spreading in the dark. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and still, they wonder, did they really escape? Or did something follow them out? #The last stand. The road back to base was the longest 30 kilometers of Harper's life. The Humvee screamed in protest as they bounced over ruts and rocks. Ray constantly checked behind them, his knuckles white on his rifle. Brooks's camera captured the glow in the mountains growing brighter with each passing minute. It's spreading faster, Ray said. Look at the ridgeline. What had been dozens of lights was now hundreds, maybe thousands, moving down from the peaks like a glowing flood. The radio crackled. Any Allied forces, this is Forward Operating Base Kandahar. Priority alert. We are experiencing unexplained. Static. Then screaming. Then silence. It used the radio signals, Ray said suddenly. We've been broadcasting for months. Every transmission, we were feeding it, giving it a path. At 9:13 at night, they came over a rise and saw the base. Guard towers on fire. Tracer fire streaking across the compound. Vehicles scattered at odd angles. And figures, hundreds of them, moving between buildings in jerky, unnatural patterns. Harper zoomed in with his night vision. American soldiers. But they moved wrong. Too coordinated. All tilting their heads at the same angle. And their eyes were black. Completely black. We can't go in there, Ray said flatly. A new voice crackled through the radio. Calm. Authoritative. All surviving personnel. This is Colonel Richards. Forward Operating Base Kandahar is compromised. Withdraw to Rally Point Gamma. Do not attempt to return to base. God help us all. Harper pulled out his map. Rally Point Gamma, abandoned Soviet airstrip, 40 kilometers south. He spun the Humvee around. They couldn't save the base. All they could do was survive. Brooks spoke quietly. Sarge, my camera's been recording everything. If this spreads beyond Afghanistan, people need to know. Then we make damn sure you survive, Harper said. They drove south, navigating by compass as their GPS died. Everywhere they looked, that glow spread across the landscape like a stain. At 9:56 at night, Brooks spotted smoke signals, 3 short bursts, the military signal for Rally Point. The abandoned airstrip held a dozen survivors. Army, Air Force, Marines. All scared. Captain Sullivan was organizing a defensive line around the edge. You 3 came from the mountains? Sullivan asked. We found the source, Harper said. Sullivan's eyes widened. You knew? Ray demanded. We knew there were reports. Soviet records from the 80s. We didn't know it would be like this. Sullivan's voice was hollow. Every base within 200 kilometers has gone dark. We've lost contact with command. And we're not sure who's infected and who's not. It can hide inside you. The meaning hung in the air. They were all possibly infected. There has to be a way to stop it, Brooks said. We tried everything at the base, a Marine corporal said. But the infected kept coming. It spreads through contact, through blood, maybe through air. Harper thought about what he'd seen. It's been asleep for thousands of years. The Soviets found it, sealed it. We woke it up with our signals. Sullivan nodded. Then we need to get that footage somewhere safe. He looked for a volunteer. A young private stepped forward. I'll go, he said, taking the camera. If I'm going to turn into one of those things, I'd rather do it trying to save people. They watched him drive away into the darkness. At 10:47 at night, the infected reached the airstrip. The shooting started. Harper, Ray, and Brooks fired controlled bursts from behind their Humvee. Bodies dropped, but more kept coming. "Fall back," Sullivan ordered. They scrambled into their vehicle. Around them, other Humvees pulled out, racing away. But there was nowhere to go. "We go back," Harper said suddenly. "What?" Ray stared at him. "To the cave. To the source. If we collapse it, seal it, maybe we can stop this." Sullivan's voice crackled over the radio. Asterisk, "I'm in. Anyone else?" Asterisk. 5 vehicles turned back toward the mountains. The drive back was strange. Infected by the hundreds moved in the same direction, but none tried to stop them, as if the thing had dismissed them. They reached the mountains at 12:23 in the morning. The entire mountainside pulsed with light, like a beating heart. "What's the plan?" Ray asked. "We pack the cave with explosives. Bring the mountain down." "And if that doesn't work?" Harper didn't answer. They reached the gap at 12:47 in the morning. Sullivan organized the teams. "Demo team with me. Security provides cover. When these charges blow, we need to be a kilometer away." The walls of the gap were changing. Metallic roots spreading through the rock, pulsing like veins. They came out into the bowl. The cave entrance glowed like a furnace. They worked fast, placing charges around the entrance. Harper rigged explosives above the cave. Ray placed charges along the walls. Brooks set the timers. Footsteps echoed from the cave shaft. Infected came out. Dozens of them. More changed now, bodies shot through with metallic roots. At their head was Morrison. The pilot's body was almost completely eaten. His mouth opened and that voice came out. Asterisk, "You think you can stop us? We are older than your species. We have eaten 1,000 worlds." Asterisk, "Maybe," Harper said, "but we're going to make you work for it." He opened fire. The infected charged. Charges set. 2 minutes. Brooks shouted. "Fall back. Now." They ran through the gap, the infected behind them. Brooks stumbled. Harper grabbed him. "Move! Move!" They burst out and threw themselves into the Humvees. "Go!" The mountain erupted. The explosion was massive. Not just explosives, but something within the cave exploding too. A pillar of light shot into the sky. The shock wave nearly flipped them over. Harper fought the wheel, driving blind through the blast. When his vision cleared, he looked back. The mountain was collapsing. Tons of rock tumbling down, filling the valley, burying the cave, the gap, everything. And as it fell, the glow began to fade. The lights across the mountainside flickered and died, like candles being blown out one by one. "Is it working?" Brooks asked. "Please tell me it's working." They drove to a safe distance and stopped, watching. The other vehicles pulled up beside them. Everyone climbed out, staring at the mountains. The glow was still fading. Across the slopes, the infected were stopping, standing still, their coordinated movement gone. Some collapsed. Others just stood there, swaying slightly, as if whatever had been controlling them had suddenly let go. "The source is cut off," Sullivan said quietly. "You did it. You actually did it." But Harper wasn't celebrating. He was thinking about that voice on the radio. "We are seeds planted in 1,000 worlds." Seeds. Plural. "This was just one," he said. "One seed. One infection point. But what if there are others? What if this is happening everywhere?" No one had an answer. They stood there in the cold Afghan night, watching the lights die, knowing they'd won a battle but not sure about the war. In the east, the sky was beginning to lighten. Dawn was coming. They'd survived the night. But you need to understand what happened next. What the official report said. According to the U.S. military, there was a cave collapse in the Kandahar Mountains on November 14, 2003. A small team was investigating the loss of 2 spy aircraft when a structural failure caused a fatal rock slide. 3 soldiers, Sergeant Harper Smith, Corporal Ray Morales, and Private Ethan Brooks, survived. Dozens more did not. The cave was sealed. The area was declared off-limits. Within a week, the entire sector was abandoned. The camera footage Private Brooks recorded disappeared, lost in the chaos of the evacuation. Or so they said. The young private who was supposed to deliver it to command never made it. His vehicle was found abandoned 50 kilometers from the airstrip. Empty except for a dark stain on the driver's seat and strange marks on the interior, like roots had grown through the cushions. Harper, Ray, and Brooks were questioned, medically cleared, and sent to different units. They were told never to speak about what they'd seen, told it was classified, told that national security depended on their silence. They obeyed. What choice did they have? But Harper still has nightmares. He dreams of the cave, of Morrison's change, of that voice saying, asterisk, we are inevitable. Asterisk, he wakes up in the middle of the night and checks his eyes in the mirror. Terrified he'll see them starting to turn black. Ray left the military after his tour ended. Last Harper heard, he was living off-grid in Montana, as far from civilization as he could get. He doesn't use electronics, doesn't trust them, says the infection could still be in the machines, waiting. Brooks became a teacher. He works with kids, trying to give them hope, trying to make up for the footage he lost, the warning he couldn't deliver. But sometimes, late at night, he pulls out a backup drive he made before that private took the camera. A backup no one knows exists, and he wonders if he should release it, if people deserve to know the truth. But here's the thing that keeps them all awake at night. The infected they saw that night, the ones who stopped moving when the cave collapsed, they didn't die. They just stopped, standing still, staring at nothing, waiting. Waiting for what? Maybe for the signal to start again. Maybe for another seed to wake up somewhere else. Maybe for us to forget what happened in those mountains and go digging where we shouldn't. You wanted to know about the night shift in Afghanistan. About the men who had no trouble staying awake on watch because they were terrified. Now you know. Now you understand. And maybe now you'll think twice before you see strange lights in the mountains. Before you hear weird signals on the radio. Before you find caves that are too perfect, too round, too smooth. Because the thing in the Kandahar Mountains might be buried. But buried isn't the same as dead. And seeds have a way of growing even in the dark.